Okay, good evening, guys. Welcome to the MLOps workshop once again. Thank you guys for joining me today too. I really appreciate your time for that. So before we start, let's quickly revise what we did yesterday. So let me share my screen. Okay, good. So yesterday we deployed our entire infrastructure on AWS, and we looked at how to set up our pull requests to validate users' source code before we could merge to a particular branch. Let me quickly bring up the repository that we are working in. I want to open some tabs. So now we've successfully finished setting up our infrastructure. Okay. So the next thing we are going to do is to actually build our model and deploy it. So I'm going to move it from to do to what to do. Okay, since it has been assigned to me, this is the next task that we are going to do. But before we do that, let us redeploy our infrastructure, because yesterday we had to destroy the entire infrastructure. So I'm quickly going to navigate to where my project is. Just a minute, please. Okay, since I can't see it, let me quickly reclone the entire thing again. So I'm going to quickly change the value of action from destroy to what apply, in order for it to set up all the infrastructure again for us to start building our machine learning model application. But before I do that, I'm going to add one new file to .github/workflows directory. I'm going to name it dev.yml. The reason why I'm adding this file is because remember that during my explanation yesterday, I said any change. So let me just keep a note here. Any change from a user, and if I'm supposed to deploy or destroy a resource, it's going to move to the setup branch. We are going to merge it to the setup branch. Then from the setup branch, we are going to merge it to the main. And any user that does not want to deploy or destroy a resources, any change from here will go to the dev branch. Then from the dev branch to main, then from main to stage, then from stage to what? Production. Okay. So now that we are going to work on the development branch, because we are going to start building our models, and when we are done, we are going to create a pull request to merge to dev, not to setup, because setup is only meant for setting up our entire infrastructure. So let me quickly give it a name. I'll name it development environment. Then I'm going to add some triggers that anytime I want to push a source code to a particular branches. So the name of this branch in our case is going to be dev. Or anytime I create a pull request, and it's targeting a specific branches. So in our case, it's going to be dev branch. I want to do certain things. So what are the tasks that I want to do, right? Aside that, I also want to have the ability to trigger this workflow manually. So I have to add workflow dispatch. Wait, so what workflow dispatch does that? It helps me to trigger the workflow manually without not creating any, without me not, like I shouldn't have to wait to create a push or a pull before I could trigger the pipeline. So with this workflow dispatch, I could just go to the console and click on a button for the entire workflow to get triggered. So now jobs, right? So what do I want? So think of a job as a way of separating operating system. So one job can have a particular operating system. So the first job can have Windows. Maybe I want to run the first job on Windows machine. I also want to run the second job on Linux machine, right? In our case, we are going to, the first thing that we will do actually in this development environment is to test our code quality. That's our data set that we're going to use to train our model. So I'm just going to give it a random name, test data quality. And I want it to run on Ubuntu. Meaning that I'm saying that I want, anytime I'm running this workflow, it should use what? Ubuntu virtual machine. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to step. So these steps will, it's like I'm telling you that each step you want to perform a specific task. So here, which kind of task do I want to do? So the first thing that I want to do is to check out my source code. Then what do I want to do? I want to check out. And I'm using the third version. Then the next thing that I want to do is to check my data quality. But here I'm just going to put a random task, which is not going to actually perform anything. So let me just give it uh, an ID of install packages. Don't worry, we'll go through all these things again. I just need this file. That's why I'm adding it currently. And I want to run a bash script. So this bash script, I want it to do something like just to display hello world for it to pass. I'm going to create another job. So this job is going to be our pull request job. So this is going to be dev pull request. And it's also going to run on Ubuntu operating system. Then what are the steps that I want to achieve over here? So the first thing that I want to do is to check out the repository again. Okay. So I'm going to give it an ID. The ID should be unique in every job. And I'm going to give it a name again. And what do I want to do? I just want to run hello world. Now, anytime someone makes a push to development branch, it's going to run both of this. But in our case, I don't want it to happen that way. I'm going to put an if condition block here to tell it that unless it's actually what someone is trying to make a push to this branch, after the pull request has passed, that's when we want to run this particular hot job. Else, if the person creates a pull request, in order for us to validate it, we are also going to use what this job to validate it. Okay. So I just have to put an if statement here. That if GitHub dot base ref. So the base ref is this branch. So I'll merging from a particular branch that a user will create and work on to this development branch. So I'm telling that anytime there's actually a push to this branch, so I'll push it here, dev. Okay, that's when I want to run this particular job, else it shouldn't run. Then I'll also come here and add another if statement here that if github dot event name. So if the event is pull request, that's when I want to run this. And I have to add another if statement because there's anytime we want to create a pull request to this setup branch, it's also going to run this because I've just said pull request, meaning that I should have another branch, another if statement saying that and GitHub action dot event dot base name equals to what dev. So if you look at the previous one that we did, let me see if I'm doing exactly. So you can see it, here is it. I'm saying that anytime we want to, anytime there's a push to, anytime there's a pull request and the base branch is set up, this one means that if a user is trying to merge a source code from a user defined branch to this branch, then this section to what trigger. But in our case, I'm going to remove this section for now because I want it to run for me to use this in our development environment. I'm coming, I'll explain what I mean very soon. So with this one, let me see what I did previously. Okay, so let's use this if statement rather. Good. So now I've changed the value of this to apply now, right? So let me quickly set up the entire infrastructure again. So let me first start git status. So I'm actually git branch. Let me see the branch I'm working on. So I'm currently working on the main. So I can't directly push on the main, but let me add and create a new branch. Great. So I'm now come to create a new branch. Remember the naming convention I'm using here. I'm using user slash right Deborah. That's my name slash tax. So what is the task that I want to do? So I want to set up an infrastructure and also build and deploy model. So if I type git branch, see that what I've now checked onto this particular branch. Okay, so how is this branching name convention going to help us? So anytime there's a new push in our repository, and let's say there's another reviewer who has to review the code, you can see that, oh, okay, so this user, the one who just created this branch and work on this particular feature, his name is called what Bright Deborah. Then the task that he actually worked on is what set up infrastructure, build and what deploy model. Oh, okay. Then I'll know that what the naming convention is what accurate. Now the next thing I have to do is to just push it. Good. Now we've successfully pushed it. Let me quickly navigate over here and refresh everything. Okay, now I'm going to navigate towards pull request. So I'm going to create a new pull request as we've been doing earlier on. Now I want to merge this particular branch. So actually this branch has to be deleted. So we will delete it later on. So let me quickly merge this one. The reason why we have to delete this one is because we've already worked on it already yesterday. So we have to delete it. It's not supposed to be here anymore. So I'm going to merge from here to setup because we want to redeploy our infrastructure before we start on building and training our machine learning model. So let me create a pull request and give it a name. What does pull request mean? So pull request, the only thing it does is that it's like you want to merge one source code to another. So new changes to what already existing source code in order for it to be validated and approved before what it could be merged to the already existing code. So I'm now going to create a pull request. So now it's waiting for a specific check. And what's that check? Required, and it's actually not running. Let me see the reason why. So let's check our if statement for our workflow. Exactly. So it's supposed to run just a few minutes. Let me reconfirm again. Okay, it's not running. Just a minute. So it's a pull request, and the base name is what? Setup. Let me reconfirm the pull request I created again. Okay, let's do something else. Let me quickly come here and do some changes right now. Oh, okay. So I've seen why is the trigger is not actually triggering. It's because there's actually a conflict in our HOT, our source code. And conflict is something that I personally hate because sometimes it's very difficult to resolve. So let me quickly resolve it over here. Move this and I'm done. Now the trigger will start very soon. See, it has started. So let's wait for it. So whilst our infrastructure is getting deployed, let me quickly navigate to okay, let me quickly approve of it first for the entire infrastructure to get deployed before I show you something. Let me quickly go and approve. Okay, so now our entire infrastructure will set up for us. So we just have to sit down and wait. So this training, we are going to use a particular data set on Kaggle. So let me navigate to Kaggle just now. So I already have a Kaggle account. I'll download the data sets and use it. So I'll share the link with you guys. So there's actually the data set. It's called loan prediction. Okay. So they've already even given us about the data set and the problem statement over here that we are going to use. So let me quickly download this data set. Let me share the link in the chat. So this is the data set. I'm going to copy it and bring it to my working directory. So I'm actually working in this directory. So let me just leave it over here. I'm going to extract it. I'm going to rename it again. Okay. So let's check if our infrastructure. Okay, so our infrastructure is still getting deployed. Let's see what we already have. So our notebook is getting provisioned. Let's check our gate. Okay, this one is up and running. Let's check our DynamoDB table for our state locking. Okay, so this one too is available. Let's check the S3 storage account that we'll be using. Okay, so everything is set. Okay, so Rodney, I'm listening. Rodney, you can go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah, hello. So
Yeah.
actually, so we can see the screen first and foremost. First thing we can see where you were showing us something. We can just see your Google. We could see just your Google Meets. You know, that was all we could see after you sent us to the Kaggle on prediction side. Yeah, and
Okay.
then yeah. So if you can demonstrate, and then I also have one question. Like maybe I'll ask more after your presentation. That's I did everything that we did yesterday, but then the authentication with the policy I copied it, but it seems not to be working. So probably
All
if
right.
you have time later.
Sure. So, Mr. Akin, you can also ask your question while our resources is getting provisioned. But first of all, can you guys see my screen now?
We can just see your Google Meet.
All right.
It's
Let
stuck.
me. Okay. Let me stop it and reshare it again. Okay. So I'm in my GitHub account. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can now.
All right. Let me navigate to a different screen and see if you can still see it. Can you still see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. So I'm actually on my AWS console. You can see, right?
Sure.
All right. So let's continue. So let's quickly check how our okay. So it looks like our infrastructure is still hot, setting up. So let's do one thing first. I'm actually going to upload the data set in the S3 bucket which got created. So this is what we are actually trying to mimic the whole world, the real world. Okay. So in the real world, there's going to be a database with data sets, and we will be moving the data set from the database to a data lake. So a data lake is like a storage that any data can be put in for it to be processed before it gets moved to what? A data warehouse. Okay. So I'm going to move the downloaded data set over here. So let me quickly upload it. Let me create a folder first. Okay, so inside this folder, I'm going to upload the data. Good, now we now have our data set over here. So now our data set inside, so let's assume this S3 bucket is our database, okay? So it contains our raw data which has not been processed or anything has been done towards it. So under normal circumstances, a data engineer will actually create a pipeline using ETL tool to what? Move the data from different types of data sources. So it can be a data in S3, a data in Google Cloud, a data in Microsoft Azure, create a pipeline using an ETL tool to extract everything into what? The data lake, because you are not supposed to get access to the database itself, right? So the data engineer will actually perform transformation techniques on the data set before it gets what? Uploaded into the data lake. Okay, so right now what we are trying to do is that we are actually trying to mimic the real world scenario whereby we have our database, our data lake, and our data warehouse. So now that we have our database, let's check if our infrastructure, great. So our infrastructure is done. We have everything set up now. So let me go quickly move to the navigate to the SageMaker Studio that I deployed. Now we have it. So I'm going to open the SageMaker Studio now. But there's one thing that we shouldn't forget that we should do. Okay, that's remember that from here, I said anytime we merge from setup, we have to merge to main. Then anytime we merge from user to dev, it's going to go to main, stage, and prod. So this will always have a copy of the latest version. So anytime we want to pull the new changes, we are going to pull from the main branch. So let me quickly navigate to the console and create another pull request to merge to the main branch. So now from setup to main. So now let me create the pull request. Let me approve. There's actually no rule to check a particular pull request. We'll do all these things later. So now we have all the changes in our main branch now. So let's try to check if what I'm referring to is true. Let's create another pull request to merge from setup to main. You see that hot? There are no changes to be merged. So the next thing that we should do is to delete the two branches that we created earlier on, which is this and also this one. Good. Now our environment is clean. Let me quickly refresh it to make sure that everything is gone. Great. So now we have our environment, our repository hot cleaned. So let me quickly navigate to over here. So one thing you should know that as an MLOps engineer, you're actually not going to build a machine learning model. That's not your job, okay? It's the job of a data scientist or a machine learning engineer to be building machine learning models. But the reason why we are going through all this headache to build the models from scratch on our own is because you have to understand how it works. So assuming if a data science or a machine learning engineer gives you a Jupyter notebook and asks you to convert everything you see into it into a pipeline, you will be able to understand what's going on. if you're lucky and you have a data science in your team who also understand a little bit of MLOps practices, he can also do the setup for you. Like what I mean is the Python code to set up the CI/CD pipeline. Then you take it from there. But if you go to if you're if you're a part of a team who don't have any knowledge in it, they will definitely give you a Jupyter notebook or a Python script containing everything in it. Then it's your job to convert everything into a pipeline to automate their entire life cycle. Okay. So the first thing I'll do here is to open a terminal. Then I'm going to navigate to this directory. Let me show you something over here. You see there's a folder called users, okay? And there's another folder called template. So I created this folder because assuming I'm not the only data scientist working on this project, and there's a different data scientist who's also working on this project, right? So we are going to use this template. So I'm going to make a copy of this template in my name. So if, like, assuming we have 5 data scientists, they'll make a copy of this template and name it as their name. So if we have 3 users like Owusu, then another user as Bright, and another user as Deborah, or another user as Kezia, or any other person, right? So let's assume if we have 4 users. What we'll do over here is that we will duplicate these templates and rename them all to Owusu, Bright, Deborah. So any data scientist who will join will try to do that. So let me quickly navigate to the console once again. So we have our terminal, okay? So this Jupyter, this SageMaker Studio is actually running in AWS managed VPC on an EC2 instance, but we just don't have access to those EC2 instances. It's being managed by AWS for us, okay? So first of all, let me also say something here. Even though we've not reached anywhere, I hope we can see the importance of MLOps in machine learning applications. The reason being so is that imagine a data scientist or a machine learning engineer who don't have any knowledge about infrastructure, who even doesn't know of anything, right? The only thing he or she knows is to build an efficient ML models and deploy them into production. Imagine the stress that they will have to come into each platform to deploy everything. It's because everything has been automated. That's why you see everything here. Else you have to done a lot of manual work. So as you can see, we are using an infrastructure as code, which is what a DevOps practice into a machine learning application. So with the infrastructure as code, we've used it to set up our infrastructure. Okay. Okay. So let me move on to what we're about to do. So I'm going to quickly navigate to a directory called SageMaker. Now you can see that we have our folder over here. So I'm going to move into it. Now, inside it, we have setup and users. So if you type pwd, it will show you the current part that you are in, the current directory. So I'm inside my loan app. So now I have to move into the users and try to duplicate the template into my name. So this is what I'll do. Let me first navigate to the users directory and make a copy of it. I'm going to name it Bright. Now you can see that there's a template called Bright. So I'm going to come back over here and move to users. Now I have Bright. So now we are going to have all our Jupyter notebooks inside this notebook directory. If we need a data that we have to download, it's going to be here. If we want any additional scripts, so all our ML pipelines are going to be here. Then we also have our APIs. Okay. So I'm going to open the notebooks directory and create another file. So this I'm going to use Conda Python 3. And I'm going to name it as main. You can name it, you can give it any name you want. I'm just giving it name as main. So see, now we can see it over here, main. Okay. So now we are going to start building our machine learning model from scratch. But based on our discussion earlier on, we saw that before a machine learning model could be built, let me open this PPT. I want to show you the MLOps lifecycle once again. So this is the MLOps lifecycle. So there's going to be a problem definition. So this is what we are going to do now. So what's going to be our problem definition over here? You don't have to worry about this thing. Just make sure you understand everything I'm doing so that in case when you join an organization as an MLOps engineer and they give you a notebook, you'll be able to understand whatever is going on inside the notebook, okay? So luckily, with Kaggle, they've already given us a problem statement. Let me reopen it again. It's not here. So there's a problem. This is our problem statement. So now our data set. So the data set is a secondary data which can be found on Kaggle. So we have two types of data sets. We have secondary and primary. So assuming if you join an organization, they already have a data set for you to use to train your machine learning model. It's called primary data set. But in our case, we don't have a data set. We took it from Kaggle. So it's a hot secondary data set. So inside this notebook, I'm going to leave a link to this data set. This thing always beat me up. Let me just leave it. It always beat me up. I don't know why. So now the next thing that we are supposed to do over here, remember each data scientist has his way of writing or training his machine learning model. You may get a notebook with this thing, which is not part of it, but this is the best practice that I learned from someone. So before the person goes through the entire notebook, the person will understand what the notebook is actually about, okay? So here, evaluation. So if you get an accuracy for F1 score, I'll explain everything, don't worry. F1 score, recall, and a good score between, just a minute, between, let's say 50 and 40 and 50, then our model is ready to be in production. So what I mean is that after we train our machine learning model, we are going to use matrices, okay, to check the performance of our model to see whether, okay, this model is performing well or this model is not performing well. Okay, so what I'm saying is that these are some of the matrices that we use to actually check the performance of a classification model. So this is a classification model that we are going to build. So a classification model simply tells you either true or false. Okay, so either we should give a loan to someone or we shouldn't give to. Okay, so we are actually working on a classification problem. So with the accuracy score, with the matrices that we are going to use, we are going to use more than this matrix, I know, but I'm just giving a heads up. There's so recall F1 and there's one that which is very important, precision. Would I just remember the precision? So if you get an accuracy score, F1 score, recall score, and a good precision score between 40 and 50, then our model is ready to be in production. But under normal circumstances, depending on the type of problem that you are working on, 40 to 50 is very low. So normally it will be something like 80 to 95%, because the moment you get something like 100%, meaning there's something wrong with your model. You can never have 100% while training a machine learning model application. But since this is a demo, I don't want to be doing too much of experiments, so I'm reducing the accuracy score to between 40 and 50. And whilst doing it, if I see that I'm not able to reach this target, I'll just change it again. So now the evaluation metrics that we are going to use, metrics to use are, we are going to use F1 score. We are going to use precision. We are going to use recall. We are going to use confusion metrics. Confusion. Please don't mind my spellings. Confusion metrics. We are going to use recall. Classification report. Classification report. When we start using these metrics, I will actually try to explain everything. Now, the algorithms that we are going to use, algorithms to experiment with. We are going to use random forest classifier. We are going to use logistic regression. You just forget about this thing. What this algorithm does is that it's just used to train your machine learning models. That's all. Just don't try to think of it as any big thing. So if you're not a data scientist and you're from a DevOps engineer background, just think of these algorithms are what we are going to use to train our machine learning models. Okay. Then we're going to use decision tree. Then maybe let's say XGBoost. I don't know. Then the last one that I think we will use is I already have decision tree. If you're a data scientist, you can just leave one in the comment for me to pick for us to experiment on. Now, what are we going to do? Our steps. We're actually going to explore our data set. That's the first thing we will do. The second thing we will do is to reprocess our data set. Then the next thing is to build our model, evaluate it, optimize it. And the next thing we will do is to save or to deploy model. Good. So let me, since no one plays any algorithm here, let me just put something like, I think 4 is okay. I think, so let's assume we are 2 data scientists working on this project and another data scientist gets my notebook. Okay, so this is what the person said, this is the problem definition. Okay, I understand. Okay, so the data set is a secondary data set and it's from Cargo. So this is the link to it. Oh, okay. Evaluation. Oh, okay, so this is actually the evaluation metrics that we are going to use and we are targeting this score. Oh, okay. Then there's the evaluation metrics that we are also going to use to evaluate our model. Then there's also the algorithms that we use. So before the person will go through the entire notebook, the person has an overview of all the things that you are doing. And once again, this is my way of writing or building machine learning models. Everyone has his way of doing stuff, okay? So the next thing that we are going to do is what? Set up some environment variables over here. Because I don't want to be using the values itself. What if I want to change a particular value? I have to go through the entire notebook and change it again. So I'm just going to set them over here. So environment variables, set environment variables, okay? And they are going to be our database name, the one we deployed, our data lake. And we are going to have our data warehouse. I'm going to quickly copy everything. It's actually here. These 3 names over here. Okay, so let me copy the data warehouse first. Let me close it. That's the data warehouse. And the next one is data lake. Also, if you're a data science or a machine learning engineer, you can also learn some of my techniques that I am using. Then the last one is what? Database. So now anytime I need the values, I just have to call the names, data base name, and what? I'll get the name. Okay, so that I won't be repeating myself, putting these actual values. So now the next step that I'm going to do is to import my libraries that I will be using over here. So import core libraries. Okay, so I have some libraries that I call them core, and those libraries are libraries that most data scientists will be using. So we have one core in pandas. We used to perform exploratory data analysis on our data set. We have some called NumPy. Okay, then we have another one called matplotlib for visualization. Matplotlib, pyplot. We have another one to call Seaborn, my favorite SNS. And if you see how I've arranged it, I have a way of arranging my style. My stuff is actually personal. I just want it to look more nicer. Great, now I'm done. Let me import one more. Import SageMaker libraries. So I'm going to import SageMaker. And I'm going to trust me, all these things that I'm doing, they are very, very easy. The only if you really want to be doing things like this, you just have to give yourself a little time, lock yourself within 6 months. You'll be able to do something crazy, even more than this kind of things that you see me doing. I'm also going to import a library called Boto3. Okay, so Boto3 is a Python SDK that we use to communicate with AWS services. So now I have everything set up here, but I can also do something that's personally. So let's assume I can give a comment, okay, that now that we have set up our infrastructure, we are going to start building our models by performing different experiments. Okay, different experiments. But before we do so, we will first bring in our data set, explore it, and get more insight from it. So it's just something that I just placed here. Why did I do such a thing, right? So maybe if someone else is going through, okay, so what is the next step? The person can read and understand. So based on what I've done so far up to here, by the time the person reaches here, trust me, the person knows everything that you are actually coming to do. So I'm actually going
Right.
to, yes,
Right.
please. Yes.
Are you using AWS Boto3 to automate the applications, or what are you using the Boto3 for?
Okay, good. So I'm using the Boto3, okay, to communicate to AWS services. So for example, we have S3, right? Our database over here, and we have this data set in it. Now I have to get this data set into what? Our notebook. So Sage Boto3 is an SDK, a Python what? SDK that we use to work, helps us to communicate with AWS services. So if, for example, I want to insert a data into a DynamoDB table, I can use Python Boto3 SDK to do that. Okay. So now moving on to the next step, I'm now going to bring in the data set. So if you can see everything I'm doing, I'm adding comments. It's very good practice for you to be doing this kind of stuff. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to, please can you mute yourself? Bring in. So I can just say we are now going to bring in our data set using Boto3. So, but before we do that, let's initialize Boto3 first. Okay, so I'm going to say maybe
Why?
Boto3.
Right. Why didn't you make good use of the CDK and you're using SDK?
The CD, good. So you should know the difference. Okay, both are used to serve different purposes. Okay, we are using SDK SDK is just like Terraform. It's an infrastructure as code tool to set up cloud infrastructure, but using the programming language of your choice. That's CDK. Okay, so with CDK, we have Python, we have Java, any programming language of your choice to set up infrastructure. So like as we used Terraform over here to set up our infrastructure, with CDK, we are not going to use Terraform. We are going to use Python script to set up our infrastructure. Then with the SDK, we use it to communicate with the services, like inserting data into our DynamoDB table, deleting data, getting or updating data. Okay. So please, any other question, I'll really wish it gets reserved till we reach the question and answer session. It's almost time. We really have some few minutes. So let me quickly finish with today's demo. So I'm going to initialize boto3 dot session. Then we want what? S3. So we are saying that from boto3, we want to use S3 so that we can what? Communicate with what? S3 bucket. So, but before that, let me do something over here to initialize sagemaker. So sagemaker dot session then row get row. I'll explain very soon, just a minute. One more thing. I'll explain everything very soon, just a minute. With default bucket name. Okay, great. Now display row and please don't mind me with my spelling. So default bucket name. So print. These are all Python codes that I'm writing.
Oh, okay.
If you have
No, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
all right. I'll explain it very soon. Just a minute. I'm almost down. Great. So what I've done over
Right. So
yes.
why didn't you use I want to, because since you are working in the AWS environment, you choose to go with the Terraform more than the CDK. Well, I think that one will make the application seamless.
Seamless
As in making it fast, like in terms of the using the Terraform now. It will provision your infrastructure in a very fast manner than using the Terraform to do it, because you're using the AWS, you're working in the AWS environment.
Okay, good. So the reason why I personally chose Terraform is because I'm a multi-cloud engineer. I work on AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. So I normally tend to use tools that can work across all the three cloud platforms. CDK, AWS CDK only works with AWS. I can use it to provision resources on Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. So in order for me to learn CDK, I prefer to learn Terraform, master it, and use it in all the three cloud platforms. Okay. All right. Please, if you have any other question, I will really be happy if you reserve the question for later. And please, can you mute yourself? All right. So this is what I'm actually doing over here. I've initialized the boto3. So boto3 is like, I'm saying that I want to use S3 bucket. So I'm going to communicate with S3 buckets. Okay. Then the next thing I'm doing is that I'm getting the session of SageMaker in order for me to get the default bucket name. Okay. So here it's printing the default bucket name for me. Then the row, this is the row that this entire notebook is going to use to authenticate to other AWS services. So if I want to communicate with S3 bucket, it's going to use this row to check whether I have the permission to access any S3 bucket on AWS, else it won't allow me. Okay. So here I want to get the bucket name and the row name. So if we come to if we navigate to our S3 bucket, let me quickly refresh it. You see that what we have what? SageMaker, then the region and the account ID. This got created automatically for us when I executed this script. Then this row is something that which got provision when we run our CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so now we are done. The next thing that we have to do is to bring in our data set and start exploring the data set by visualizing it to see, okay, this is the data set that we are actually working with. But since time is up, let me quickly bring in the data set, display it, then we close for the day. Okay. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to use the Boto3 that I provision right now. So let me say get data set from S3 bucket. So B3 dot. Let me just name it Boto. I may forget. So Boto dot download, right? I want to download file. It has no attribute download file. Okay, so what's the available attribute for me to use to download this file? So let me see. I've forgotten, so I'll just have to search online for it. Favorite S3 bucket. Okay, so it's actually download file. I think I was on the right track. Let me see. Download file. S3.download file, then the file name, bucket name, object name, and file name. All right. So in fact, I think naming it S3 is better because I'm only using it for S3. Run it. Now S3 dot download file, and the bucket name is what? Database name. Then the next thing is object name. Let me go to the database. Okay, so loan prediction.csv. And the last thing to do is to the file name. Okay. So it's actually in raw data sets. I'll explain everything. Just give me some few minutes. / loan prediction.csv. Let's see if it will work. It has no attribute download file. Okay, so since I'm doing something wrong. Okay, so it's .client, not .session. All right. .client. Let's see. Okay.
Small C. Oh.
Exactly. So we're still getting an error from here. Let's see. It's object not found. Okay. Loan prediction.csv. Copy. So let me scroll down and see. So example wasn't given. Okay. You see how I'm doing it, taking my time to go through it to solve the errors with you. Let's see. So bucket name, hello.tsv and this. Okay. Pages. Pick this one out. Wonder what I'm doing wrong. Head object not found. Download file. Okay. Okay. Let me just use ChatGPT to give me that code. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Object key. With the key or part of the object you want to download. Let's see, local file path. Oh, okay, that's the mistake. This is the local one. So let me quickly go back. I think I know where the mistake is. I want to put it here, data raw. Okay, so that's it. So I think this time around it will work. Oops. No directory. Okay, yeah. I should give it a name as well. Great. So I think what this does that s3 dot what download file is taking the bucket name, then is actually this thing you can see here is what raw data sets that's what loan prediction is actually this folder. You see, we have a folder inside cohort raw data set. When you open it, you have what the data. So that's it. That should come first. Then the next thing over here is what the part that I want to download this data set into. So when we come back over here, let's navigate back to our loan. So let me go to users, bright, data, then raw. You see, we have it here, loan prediction.csv. So now, in fact, let's do something else first. Something like, because anytime I run this file again, it's going to download the data and it's going to make a duplicate of it. So I'm going to wrap it inside a try and catch block. Okay. So let me do it here. So try, I'm going to read the data sets, pd.read CSV. And I'm going to copy the part of the data set from here. We are done very soon. I will be taking the question and answers very soon. I want us to see the data set first. So when this data set doesn't exist and we run this, it's going to throw an error. So when the error gets executed, then it will download the data set for us. Data set exists. And I'll just print something here. Data set does not exist. I need to download it now. So I'm going to go back and delete the data set from where it is now. Let me run it. Let me put it in a variable so that we'll have access to it. So let me add some comments. Get data sets. There should be download data set. Let me run it. Data set does not exist. Trying to download it now. Data set does not exist. I'm coming. Okay, I think I have to fetch this. Okay. Let me delete it. Okay, it's gone. Let me see. Dataset does not exist. Trying to download it now. Display dataset. Let's display the dataset. ef.head. What .head does that it shows us what the first 5 rows. So you can see you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now that we have this, when we stop working on this project and we push it, that when we come back the following day, all we have to do is rerun this notebook and it will do everything for us. Then we continue. Okay, but I don't know why. Still, anytime the data set is, we are still getting data sets does not exist. Since it's time, we'll solve this thing probably tomorrow. So let me quickly finish it, wrap everything up, and let's take the questions. So if you remember, we are supposed to work on a specific branch, which is the development branch. Just a minute, I will take all the questions. So let me quickly, let me see where I am. I'm in the loan app now. Let me see, git status. Loan app. Sorry. Oh. Sorry about that. Okay, I hope it's clear enough. Just a minute. So let me add it quickly. What should be the comment name? Worked on some parts of our model. Okay, so gate branch. Let's first check the branch. We are main. Remember, we can't push directly from main. So what do we have to do? We have to check up on a different branch. Check out. Right, Deborah. Then the tax was what? Build model. So gate branch will show us the branch that we are in. So let me push the branch. Gate push. Let me just copy this. So we are getting invalid username and password. Wow, there's work to do. Please just bear with me. Let me just quickly wrap it up, else we won't get it in our repository. Okay, good. So we have to create an SSH key and add it to our repository. So SSH key then. Okay. So now I've created an SSH key that I'm going to use to authenticate from here to GitHub. So let me quickly do that. Let me cat.ssh. Cat. Okay, I'm going to copy everything here. I don't want to be using the token to copy. So I'm going to navigate to my GitHub repository now. Let's close. I'm actually going to settings. Then I'll go to SSH and GPT key. I'll just create an add new SSH. Okay. So I'm going to name it as loan app. I'll add this SSH key. When I'm done with this demo, I'll delete everything. Great. Now it has been added. So let's go back and do one thing again. loan app. And let's navigate to, let's just get the URL. This SSH URL, okay. And let's come back to here. So let's quickly go back to where are we even moving? SageMaker. So we are going back to SageMaker. And here we have our loan. So let's type get remote. Let's remove this. I'm going to remove this origin. Put origin. So it's gone. So let me add it. Get remote. Add origin. So now I can push. Yes. Now let's go back to let's check if there's any. So there's a branch. So here's it. So let's quickly create our pull request and merge to the development branch. Okay. So from here to dev, create how to merge this. No, this is not a good name. To merge first went into dev. Let's see. So great. Let's confirm. Great. Now it has been added now. So let's go back to the dev branch and let me show you something. There you see here, we don't, when you navigate to users, the main branch, we only have a temp. But now I'm going to navigate to dev. Now with users, we have what right now. Then with Bright, when you move to notebook, we have what? My notebook resources over here. Okay, so now you can see how I'm using DevOps practices inside what machine learning and what data science application. Okay, so now let me quickly clear the screen from here. So tomorrow when we come back, we are going to continue from here. So let me quickly clear everything and start answering every question that we have. But before I even do that, let's do one more thing first. I've forgotten. Let's try to remember from dev to what? Main. From setup to what? Main. That's our syntax. Dev to what? Main. So great. So now approve. Now main have all the changes. So if a data scientist, a different data scientist come to work on this part, he will just have to pull from the main branch and continue from there. So that's it. I'm really sorry for the delay. We are, I think, 19 minutes ahead. So if anyone has a question, please, it's one at a time, okay, so that everything will be, will all be on the same space. So Trace, promise, you can go ahead and ask the question.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. So, like, you were asking a question about the model train. As you are trying to import the data, I think it's the print statement. It didn't have a T there, so I think it's the reason why it was not showing the data sets.
Oh, okay. So it was actually throwing an error because the print statement didn't have T and it was actually running the exception block. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thanks for
And
that.
yeah, then another thing is that, like, I was expecting you to like how will I say, like, install like pandas,
Good.
matplotlib, but I saw you just importing it already, because I did a project earlier and I used EC2 instance where I installed Miniconda and all these Python libraries. But here you just went straight to it and just imported it. So is there any reason for that? Then the third question I have is about this SSH stuff, right? Like my GitHub, I used HTTPS. I've not used SSH. So now, does it mean that if I'm trying to do this project now, I have to use SSH and not HTTPS? Thank you.
So I'll first answer the last question regarding the SSH and the HTTPS. I'll personally advise you to stop using the HTTPS and start using the SSH because of security reasons. Okay, when you use the HTTPS, it's not secured. Anyone who gets access to those tokens can get access to your repository and do whatever he or she wants from it. Okay, so it's actually not best practice to use the HTTPS. So from now on, you should start using what? The SSH key. So coming back to the second question. So actually, I think I made a very big mistake of not explaining what SageMaker is. Okay. So SageMaker, okay, is actually a platform for building and training machine learning models, computer vision, and NLP applications on AWS. So with SageMaker, all the most popular libraries get what installed automatic for you when you provision it. So when you come to like SageMaker Notebook here, when you provision it by default, AWS installs everything, most of the popular teams. So it has PyTorch, TensorFlow, Scikit-learn, and most of the popular tools on it. That's why I didn't install it. So if I were to be in something like EC2 instance, that I have to deploy my own EC2 instance, whereby I have to deploy my own EC2 instance, that's when I will afford install the software on it. But in this case, AWS does everything for you. So you don't have to necessarily have to worry yourself. And SageMaker, here's a SageMaker was built purposely for machine learning and data science projects and all that. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Next question, please.
Yeah. This is just by the way. Right. When will you be able to access like this configuration? This thing, not necessarily about explanation, but then configuration. Maybe it might be something simple. So when do you think you can do? Because of I tried explaining to you like at the beginning, but I didn't want to draw the class back. So or if
Yeah,
you or
yeah,
someone
yeah.
who can, yeah, I'm listening.
Are you referring to your own when you were trying to set it up
Yes,
on your environment?
yes. My policy this thing, I set it up, but I'm getting some error. I don't know. It's
So
telling me that I can't do assume role. Is it because so fine? The account that I'm using when I was doing the provisioning that policy, I was using an IAM user that I created. So that's what I did. But yes, still it's still under the main user. So the when I logged out, signed out, and I signed in, the policy is still there. Like that row is still there. Sorry, that row is still being created. So
do
it
you
should
have
still,
the
yeah, I'm here.
IAM user that you created? Does it have administrator permission? Because you have to be an administrator.
Yes, it
It
does.
it
It
does,
does.
right?
Yes, I was able to attach the administrator access to that row. If not, it would even, I think the row would not allow me to even, when I was creating that row, it won't allow me to access that particular uh, policy or something.
Yeah. So this is what I will advise you. You see, I've posted the video on YouTube, and
Yeah, I use your videos on YouTube.
to do it, to set it
Yes,
up.
to do it.
Okay.
Everything is there's only that particular issue when so you see that when it's running, when the workflow is running and you get to that side, it will give an error. I try to.
Is it a private repository?
Is it a private repository? No. As I was trying to
Okay.
when you make it private, you can't even access the
Okay, don't
environment.
worry.
So things
Yeah.
like this. Or how do we? Because they are very
Okay.
essential.
Yeah.
I do understand, but you see when it does that, then it's like.
Sure. So let's do this. So after this class, I'll meet with you and actually try to figure it out within just some 5 minutes and see how we'll be able to solve it. But everything that I did is what I did with you guys.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything that I
Different.
think I did it exactly. So
Yeah.
from here, I'll just give you some 5 minutes with you and me, then we do it together. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions, please? All right. So it seems like there's no other question. So what I'll do now is we have just 4 minutes left. Let me quickly destroy my resources, because since I'm using version control, I can destroy the resources, redeploy it again, and continue on, because now we have the notebook on GitHub. So anytime that I have to use the notebook again, I just have to repeat myself again. So let me quickly open my terminal. Let me check the branch. So let me check out to the main. Okay, so it's status. I'm going to pull the changes that we have. We'll now have the changes. So now if I open users, I have Bright here now. Okay. I have my notebook. I can quickly open the notebook from here, because I already have my local environment set up that I use. So let me close it. And let me delete the branch I have over here. So get branch, there's no branch. So now git checkout user right task delete infrastructure. So now get branch. I'm going to work on this branch by what? Setting the action to what? Delete. Okay, destroy rather. Destroy infrastructure. Well, actually, all these things that I'm doing, to tell you the truth, someone was asking how come I learned all these things, and trust me, they are very easy, very, very easy. Even upon all the skills that I have, I still spend 5 hours per day to study aside my work. So imagine, it's just consistency and continuous hot studying. Let me quickly come here. Hope by now you should be familiarized with this kind of stacks activities over here. So delete infrastructure. I'm going to add it to what setup now. Once we are done, we don't need the infrastructure anymore. So let's wait for. Almost time. So now pull request has passed. Let me quickly approve of it. I think it's over here. Let me quickly approve. Okay, now we already know that it will destroy all the infrastructure for us. So I think that's all. If anyone doesn't have any question for me, let's end the meeting for today and let's continue tomorrow the same time. Okay. So see you guys tomorrow, and thank you once again for your time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm still here, so.
Sure.